Welcome back. Our next guest previously visited the show as an NYC principal discussing new protocols and the effect of COVID-19 on public schools. He now joins us again as president of the NYC Elementary School Principal Association. Luis Torres, also known as the Bronx Principal, stops by to discuss his new role. Luis, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you. I love being on Bronx.
Now, when we last spoke, we discussed what back to school was like in the wake of COVID. How has the public school system been like in regards to COVID since then?
It's been incredible. They're so happy to have the children back in the school. I'm happy to be back in the school myself. And it's just, it's a different feel to be back with the children in the school building and doing the work. A lot of our children struggled during the pandemic because of the virtual learning.
Now, you were recently announced president elect of the New York City Elementary Schools Principal Association. Can you first tell me about that association?
Yes, it's a professional development organization that was established to provide professional development support to the elementary schools across New York City. It's a very big organization. It's a big responsibility. I'm going to take it to another level. I'm going to not only provide professional development support, but I'm looking to get more resources for the elementary schools and really just put the organization on the map and make it a strong, viable professional development organization.
Now, I thought this was really interesting. Why was it important for the organization to have a focus on elementary school?
Yeah, I mean, elementary school is where the children build their foundational skills. It's where it all starts. Before in the past, people would always wait till the children got to high school and middle school to try to provide supports and interventions. We realized that we have to start at the early grades. If we wait till middle school and high school, it's too late. So it's very important that we get our children off to the right track. They should all be reading by the time they leave elementary school. And we should also be able to provide a lot of mental health supports and get them, a strong foundation.
Now, what responsibilities will you have with your new role as president?
Yeah, as president, I'm gonna, you know, make sure that all principals, elementary school principals, have the supports that they need to be successful. If there are any schools that don't have programs or resources, I'm going to work with those principals to try to get them those resources that they need. I want veteran principals to adopt new principals and help them to become effective principals in the system. So I'm taking on a lot. I'm going to try to be innovative and creative in the way I lead this organization and see how I can better support the principals across New York City so that all principals can be successful and all children can benefit from the quality leadership in the schools.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about the importance of elementary schools again, because like you mentioned, it is the foundation for, all of the education of the kids in our city. Do you think elementary schools have a bit of a harder time getting these resources and getting that support?
I say that it depends. There's a lot of investment in middle schools, right? And we understand why, and a lot of investment in high schools because usually that's where the children need the most support. But what the pandemic showed is that elementary schools need equal amount of support because if we don't work with the children at the early grades, they're going to have a harder time in the middle schools and high schools. We need to really focus on bringing more programs for the elementary schools so that our children can build the foundational skills that they need to be successful in middle school, but also so that our families can get back on track, parents can go back to work, and we can really move as a society and as a community forward. We need to make sure that elementary school children also have the nutrition and the other things that impact them as far as education, making sure that they get their eye exams, making sure that all the priorities that usually come before education are taken care of, which are food, shelter, safety, health, and access to technology. So once we ensure that the elementary school children have all these foundational things in place, then they can be truly successful in life.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about your experience as a New York City principal? And I wonder, what will you take from that experience, everything that you've learned and continue to learn, and how will you bring that to your new position?
So I've been a principal for over 18 years. And I will continue to be a principal as long as the passion and drive is there, and I'm having an impact on my community. What I hope to do is be able to be a model and a support to my colleagues, and be able to get them the resources and teach them how to hustle and beg, like I've been doing for all these years, to get those resources for their schools. And I just hope to be a model for them, and be able to do some of the hard work so that their jobs and their lives are easier. But it's always about modeling and showing them anything is possible if you work hard and you're willing to do it for the children.
What are some current concerns New York City principals, I guess, in elementary school have right now?
Yeah, I'm afraid of one thing, and I'm gonna be honest. I'm afraid that we're going to go back to the digital divide. During the pandemic, we sort of did a lot of great work around ending the digital divide, making sure all children have devices, making sure that the internet access was available to the children. But little by little, I'm starting to see a slowdown in that effort. I think we need to still continue to invest in technology, making sure all children have a device in their hands. And we have to continue to push that initiative. I'm afraid that we will go back and then we'll start again seeing children who don't have devices. So if anything, as a leader and as someone who is conscious of that, one of my roles and missions is to keep the digital divide closing to the point where it's no longer an issue.
So we talked about COVID a lot, and I think it's necessary just when you're talking about education in 2022. Can you speak to the resiliency a lot of New York City teachers and principals had to display just to make it throughout, 2020, 2021, and now 2022?
Yeah, I mean, it was just a challenge every day, to wake up and have the energy to do twice as much the work that you would normally do, but also trying to stay alive and healthy and safe and positive, right? When there's so much negativity, and for a lot of our families, they experience death and dying and a lot of other issues that added to the trauma. Now, the pandemic didn't bring about the inequities; it just made it more visible, and it just added another layer of trauma to a lot of our families that already were dealing with trauma. So, as a principal and as teachers and as children, we all faced the trauma, in different levels, but no one could escape it. And for teachers in schools where they were used to working with the children in person, having to deal with them virtually was a challenge in itself. And as a school leader, when I'm a very emotional and touchy feely principal that loves to be around the children and experiencing the community. It's very hard. That's one piece of my leadership style that I had to adjust. So yeah.
Now, you talked about being afraid of things kind of going back to the way they were. What are some overall areas in New York City schooling you believe needs some improvement after your time working in a school?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an advocate for equity, right? And when I look at other communities, um, I see the inequities that exist in the community I serve. For me as a school leader, that's hard. I want to try to create a level playing field for our families. And when I look at community centers in other communities, and then I don't see it in the community I serve, I see a lot of disparate, differences in the communities that I work in as opposed to the community where I live. It's challenging because you want your families to have the same things that you have. You want your families to be able to experience the positive life that's out there, but the inequities continue to exist, and we have to figure out how to end poverty. We have to figure out how to bring more resources to our communities. And I think it really starts with building community centers and facilities that provide a lot of support to the families. And it shouldn't be at a cost, right? Because we already know that our families can't afford it. We got to figure out how to be able to provide these services at very low or no cost to the families so that our children, our families can experience those things that, the more wealthier communities have.
Now, I think it's great that someone that is so passionate about just New York City schools and students is taking on this role because I think that's definitely what we need. Can you just explain what are some goals the NYC ESPA have moving forward just to strengthen New York City elementary schools?
Yeah, so as the president, I haven't really um, pushed my goals out yet, but I'm going to share them here for the first time. So one of my goals right off the bat is to provide a support for new and struggling principals to have a network of people who can support them and help them get through challenging times, whether it's a first year principal or it's a principal working in a very challenging community. I want to create a network of principals that can provide those supports. My second goal will be to take our organization and make it a viable professional development organization, which means we will be providing a wealth of professional development to principals, not only in our immediate communities, but throughout the city as well, so that all principals have access to professional development that is high quality. And then the third goal that I have to achieve is I want to make our organization powerful. I want elected officials, community leaders, and people to view us not only as principals but as community leaders as well, so that we can then have the greater impact that we need to have in our communities.
Now, you're very vocal on social media and you show like all of your work and the amazing stuff that you do in the community. How can people stay up to date with you?
Yeah, I mean, it's very simple. I'm primarily on Instagram and Twitter. On Instagram, it's very easy, the Bronx Principal. And on Twitter, it's Torres Real Talk. Those two platforms have been the ones that I've been able to connect with a lot of people and get resources that we need. Facebook, I usually don't really touch Facebook. And I'm on TikTok, but I just use that to create videos to share on my Instagram. So Instagram is the best way to follow and be part of the work that we're doing.
All right, Louis, thank you so much for joining me.
No, thank you. I appreciate you.
We'll be right back with more Open BxRx Tuesday.